Hello and welcome back to the channel. In today's tutorial I'm going to be sharing with you how to cut this stylish Queen Anne neckline overbust corset or an Elizabethan corset. So if this is something you like, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button. Let's dive right into today's video. So here is my pattern, and I've gone ahead to mark out my basic measurement, which includes my shoulder to bust, shoulder to underbust, waist, and 5 inches to get my top length. At the shoulder, I marked my shoulder divided by 2, added half to it because we're attaching a sleeve, and I went down by 1 inch to draw my shoulder slope. So next, I'm going to mark my chest line, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. After that, I'll go ahead to mark what I have at the shoulder, which is my shoulder divided by 2 plus half, and I'll go ahead and rule a straight line. I'll divide what I have here into 2, and then I'll be coming in by ½ inch. And after that, at the lower part, that is the chest line, I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4. Now I'll place my curved rule, connect from the ½ inch to the bust circumference, and I'll take it all the way up. So this is what I have after I'm done marking, and I'm going to use my marker to outline this. Next, I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2 at this point because I'm marking my dart. My nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches, and I'm going to take this all the way to the lower part of my pattern paper, and I'm going to place my ruler and I'm going to connect, drawing a straight line at this point. And for my dart intakes, I'll be using a 1 inch. I'll be using 1 inch dart intake at both sides. So if you're plus size or you're a bit busty, you're going to be using 1.5 inches. After that, I'll just go ahead and rule a straight line connecting. And I'll also repeat the same process at the other side of the pattern, and I'll just go ahead and place my curved rule and I'll connect from the bust down to the under bust. After that, I'll go ahead to use my marker to outline this to make it more visible for you to see. So the next step now is to go ahead to mark 1.5 inches above my chest line. You can use 2 inches also. This totally depends on how you want your neckline to be or how you want to reveal your cleavage. So I'll be marking my dart intake of 1 inch on both sides, and I'll go ahead to connect it. Go ahead to use my marker also to connect. So after I'm done doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to insert my body measurement on this pattern. So at the bust, I'm going to be marking my bust circumference divided by 4. Measure this dart I have here, mark, and add my sewing allowance. So I don't want to have too much sewing allowance by this side, so I'm marking my under bust circumference, measure the dart intake, and adding 1 inch for my sewing allowance. Mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace, and add my 1 inch sewing allowance. Mark my hip circumference divided by 4, replace the dart intake, and also mark my 1 inch for sewing allowance. So if you notice on this pattern, I'm just using 1 inch. I don't want to add too much sewing allowance to it. It's either you use ½ inch or 1. So after that, I'll just come down by 1.5 inches and I'll be marking my bust dart. So what is your bust dart? That's the difference between your shoulder to your waist in front and the difference between your shoulder to your waist at the back. So there's no bust at the back of the dress. So if you measure your waistline from the shoulder to waistline at the back, you notice it's not the same thing as the front. So I'm going to go ahead to cut out my pattern, and after cutting this, I'm going to trace out what I have on this side, also on the other side of my pattern. So after I'm done tracing out, this is what I have, and now I'm going to alter the pattern. At the shoulder, I marked 2 inches initially, but I'll be extending it by half, so I'll connect it to the other side. So here, after marking 2 inches and connecting, I went ahead to add ½ inch to it, and I will blend it in. Also repeat the same process at this side, and I'll go ahead to connect. Go ahead to use my marker and I'm going to connect. So I noticed at this point I did not add a shoulder slant. So what I'm going to do is just trace out the shoulder from this part, and I will have the same thing. So from this part I'll be tracing out my neckline, and for my neckline I'll be going down by 1 inch after my chest line. So from that point I'm just going to draw a deep sweetheart neckline, and this is what I have. So after I'm done marking this, I'm just going to go ahead to blend off my dart, or blend in my dart, and I'll use my pin to hold it down. You can use your sellotape to hold it if you want to. So I'll just go ahead and I will pin this down. After I'm done pinning down, we'll go ahead to alter this pattern. So immediately at that point we have the sweetheart neckline. I'm going to mark, and then by the side go down a little, and I'll be coming up. So I'll also repeat this at the other side of my pattern also. I'll just go up by the side and then connect it back. So this is what I have, and I'm going to use my marker to connect this, and also connect it to the center, and then go ahead to connect it also to the other side of my pattern. So after I'm done connecting at this point, I'm going to go ahead and come down by 2 inches, and I'm going to be connecting this to the sides this way. Now I'll just go ahead and blend it off this way, make sure it's matching, and from the side I'll come up by ½ inch and take it all the way up. Now I'll also repeat the same process at the other side. I'll come up by 1 inch from that point, and that is from my underbust point, and I'll blend in my pattern here, and I'll go ahead to connect. So this is what I have here now, and we'll be moving over to the lower part. So from the center I'll mark 0.75 and also mark 0.75 at this side, come up by ½ inch, and I will be connecting it to the lower part. After that I'll connect on this side, and then go ahead to blend in my dart this way, and then extend it to the other side. After that I'll also extend this to the other side and blend it out. So now we have a little design at the lower part of this pattern. I'll be coming down by ½ inch, and I'll just take it all the way down. Go ahead to blend in my dart here and take it to the other side, and also blend in the dart that I have on this part, and I will be taking it to the side. So after I'm done doing this, I'll just go ahead to come up by 2 inches from the lower part of my pattern, and I'll fold my pattern, and from there I'll just trace out the waistline. So this is like an inbuilt corset, and also for the back you repeat the same process. So what I'm going to do right now is just to go ahead to label my pattern, because you really need to label this because of when you're joining it, not to misplace your pattern or join the wrong part to another side of your pattern. So after I'm done doing this, I'll just go ahead and I will cut this out. So this is what my pattern looks like after I'm done marking, and I'm going to place another pattern paper underneath this, because we are going to be tracing out the Queen Anne neckline underneath this pattern. So after placing it, I'm just going to go ahead to trace this out, and when I'm cutting it, I'm going to be taking note of the underbust part. So while cutting, I'll fold this up and make sure it's at the underbust, and I'm going to cut out the other side. So while cutting this also at the center, I'm going to make sure at this part, because your pattern Queen Anne neckline, we are going to be sewing and we're going to be placing it underneath an overbust corset. So while cutting this, you want to pay attention to avoid cutting out the upper part of this pattern entirely. So I'll continue cutting out the other side of my pattern, and also taking note of the underbust while I'm cutting it. So after tracing this out, I'm just going to unpin this, and I'll bring out the underbust. And while you're cutting this, make sure you don't cut out the underbust part of this pattern, and I'll just go ahead to trace the rest of the pattern. And while cutting this, I mistakenly cut out the one that is supposed to be underneath it. So that's why I was saying, while cutting out, you have to be careful so that you will not cut out the part that is supposed to be underneath the pattern. So I'll just go ahead and trace out the rest of my pattern this way, making sure it matches. And I will continue cutting the other side of this pattern. So after I'm done cutting, this is what I have. I'll be moving over to the back pattern. So I'll be using my old pattern illustration because I didn't get a clear illustration of what the back looks like. So after I'm done cutting this is what the back pattern looks like. And next we'll be moving over to the skirt of this dress. So for my skirt, I made it a bit shorter than what we have. So I'm just going to place my tape and mark 7 inches to get my hip point. So if you're a much taller person, you'll be using 8 inches, and I will be drawing a straight line at that point. So next I'm going to place my tape and I'm going to mark my waist to knee point, which is about 20 inches, and from that point I'm going to come up by 2 inches. This is to give my skirt a fitted effect at the lower part. So after that I'm just going to go ahead to draw out that line I have at the lower part as my knee point, and I'll just indicate that this is the 2 inches to make the skirt a bit fitted from that point. So I'll also label here as hip and here as waistline. So after I'm done doing that, the next step I'm going to take is to go ahead to mark my waistline. So I'll be marking my waist circumference divided by 4, add 1 inch for the dart, and I'll add my sewing allowance. So the skirt has a dart, so that's why I'm adding a dart. I'll mark my hip circumference and add my sewing allowance. So whatever I have at the hip, I'll be taking out 2 inches from it, and I'll mark it from that 2 inches I went up by the knee, and I'll take it all the way down. So I'm just going to go ahead to mark 1 inch at the lower part. So I'll be using this as a turn up effect at the lower part of my dress. So what I'll do now is just to go ahead to connect from the waistline to the hip point, and from that point I'm going to be taking it all the way to the lower part of my skirt. And after that I'll go ahead to mark the dart intake at the skirt pattern. But before that, I will be using my marker to outline this to make it more visible for you to see. So the next step now is to mark my dart, and to mark your dart is your nipple to nipple divided by 2. From that point I'll come down by 4 inches, and I will go ahead to place a ruler and draw a straight line. I'll be marking 1/2 inch at both sides, and after that I'll connect this and also connect at the other side. So here is my dart for the skirt. So after I'm done marking out the dart, I'll just go ahead to cut out or trace out my skirt. And for the back pattern of this skirt, all you're going to do is to add a zipper allowance in front. And for that, while cutting out, I marked out my zipper allowance already. So to cut out my front pattern, I'll fold this in, and to cut the back pattern, I'm going to bring out the 1 inch. So with this, we have come to the end of today's tutorial. Also join me in the sewing part.